Well, good morning. I'm Larry Schaefer. I was thinking, I did a presentation a couple days ago, and I stood up and said I've been with Agro-K for 35 years, and I thought, man, that's a long time to be at one company. Anyway, I'm glad to be here, and I welcome you. I really look forward to spending a day with you, and we have a lot of information to share with you, but we welcome your participation and feedback. That's the value of doing these Agro-K seminars, is that we have very astute growers who understand some of the serious issues that apple growers and producers face, and your input and your participation is welcomed. And so we want to encourage that. If there's confusion or need clarification, please raise your hand, and we will be recording this whole day. And Eric Christensen sets up a link so that if you want to review what we've talked about, you will be able to do that. But I would encourage you to shut off your cell phones. I was at a meeting where this guy had the gobbling turkey. You know, we'd be sitting there, and then the turkey would start gobbling. It's like everybody's looking, where's that turkey? And then it was his phone. So if you would shut off your phone, because we are recording everything. And if you have a question, we'll try to repeat it, or else I'll come and stand by you so that we can be sure to get your question and your comment on video and on our audio portion. The one thing you might notice is that Del Christensen, our Mr. Apple is what I call him from Agro-K, he's always initiated and participated in our Apple Day and had been a real founder and worker in making this Apple Day a success. Well, he's had some surgery, and he's on the other side of it, and he's now recuperating. And I spoke with him yesterday, and he said to be sure to greet everybody. He wished he could be here. He tried to work around it, but it just did not work. So he was not able to. He will not be able to be with us today. So I'm sure he'll be reviewing the video. So anything you say, he'll be checking up on you. You know, make sure his clients and customers, everybody understands what we've been trying to teach you. So Dell's original idea was, well, we hold these seminars, and his teaching background, he would bring. We teach our growers how to use these materials. Once they understand it, then they'll be able to just take off on their own program and initiate everything on their own, and we won't have to hold their hand. I said, well, we don't hold their hand, Del. He said, I know, but they'll call me and ask me, how do I do this or that, or which one should I use? And he said, well, part of it is Agro-K. We confuse growers because we keep creating new products and adding new products to our product line, not to confuse growers, but actually to address grower needs. So just to start off today, I'm going to talk just briefly, and we're going to, so we needed a new foliar sulfur product. And Alex back there, he helped us, he's our Agro-K chemist, he helped us develop this Nutra-Sulfone. And it is a sulfur source that can be foliar applied, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we also added another product which is called Top Set DL. It's a boron moly product, and particularly in varieties or soil situations where you have low boron and low moly, or your tissue test or your sap test shows you're deficient. This product would supplement even the Vigor-Cal boron moly, which we already have. This is a higher level of boron and a higher level of moly. And so it's another product tool that we're using. Then you're all familiar with Agro-K's Vigor-Cal. And to simplify things, we thought, well, let's add the Sim Spray to the Vigor-Cal. So we have Vigor C-Cal, which is our Vigor-Cal plus our Sim Spray put into one product now called Vigor C-Cal. At 2 quarts an acre, what percent of, or how much Sim Spray would we get, Alex, about? Is it about 6 ounces?
Yeah, 6 ounces.
Yeah, that's what I figured it would be about. And so that was that product. And last year, 2 years ago, we've introduced System C-Cal, which is the calcium phosphite. And this one also is, we've added the Sim Spray. You say, well, why are you confusing us? Well, what we're not trying to confuse you, we're trying to make life easier for you. That you don't have to measure out 6 ounces, 8 ounces, or that it's there at a 2 quart rate. You're basically getting a full rate of Sim Spray. This product, particularly on new plantings where you're trying to flush a root system on a plant, it has the seaweed, which will flush rooting, and the phosphite, which will flush rooting. So this product will be in your new planting program. That once you got healthy leaf tissue growing and showing, every 10, 14 days, just a light stimulation. And the purpose of that would be to flush the root system. So the foundation of a new planting system is a good root system. The more we can push rooting, this product will be really key. And so I might put this with that Micromix DL, which is kind of covers the waterfront in terms of micronutrients. So, new products then. So now we want to return to the survey, and let's start with the weather. The weather in Minnesota is always a challenge. Already we're facing weather challenges. I've been trying to get ready for this seminar, and I have been getting phone calls from the south. I mean, from Texas, Louisiana, Missouri, Tennessee, North Carolina. These growers are in full bloom. Their peaches, their cherries, apricots, wine grapes, you know. And then Saturday night, it's supposed to go to 25 and snow. So they're calling. Can I get KDL, or where's the, you know, how do I get this on? Well, is it going to help? And so we've spent a lot of time on the phone talking to these growers and helping them address this issue. So on the survey, we had a frost in May 14th, May 15th. What was that the biggest challenge, the frost, or was it the wet weather? A little bit of feedback on your growing conditions this last year. What was your biggest challenge in your orchard? Bill, you're smiling.
Well, if you lose your crop to the frost, then you don't have any other problems.
We know that. That's a hard lesson to learn, but that is true. Anybody else? Was the weather, the wet weather, the continual rain, was it hard to get those apples to finish, or did they slow down and ripen up? And Dick?
I'm curious to know if other growers had excessive premature drop on Honeycrisp right close to harvest.
Okay. Dick's question is, did they have premature drop on Honeycrisp right close to harvest? So do you think it was a disease issue that weakened the stem, or a nutrient issue, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Anybody else face that or find that? Do you have big fruit, a lot of large fruit?
Well, of course, the big ones drop easier than the
Yes, they do. Wind, weather, that kind of situation?
Be excessive wind.
Okay,
Honeycrisp always drops some, but this year it seems to be way more than average.
okay.
Was it during first picking, second picking?
It was just before picking.
Just before picking,
First picking.
Yeah, just a few days before we were going out to pick.
okay.
Pretty soon the ground is red.
Really? Red? Well, that's something we should definitely look at. That could be a nutrient issue in terms of the stem, or it could be a disease issue. Why did you didn't use retain or any of those kind of?
No, I never have on Honeycrisp.
Okay. They wouldn't work?
Oh, well, I'm sure it would work. I just have, in my experience over in, Washington, we've not used retain on honeycrisp. Unless, we had a situation where we had so many acres that we just couldn't get to it harvest in time. And then you need to retain them just, as a harvest management type situation. That would be the only scenario where I would think guys would use that on their honeys.
So Seth Elkington here is at Agro-K rep, and he works with Agro-K growers in Oregon and Washington. So he's speaking from that kind of experience, and he will be talking to us shortly. Well, good. That's something to know. Anything else? We're going to keep going here. We're not going to growing issues. Any growing issues that jump out at you that were something that, if we're aware of some of these things, we will definitely try to address them today and get after them. Quality? Yes.
Under growing issues, I guess I'm still trying to find the optimal way to manage weeds within my planting. And, we all understand that Roundup can tie up some of the important things in the soil. I don't know, I guess, what have people found that is the best solution to weed control?
I'm sure just about everybody uses some herbicide. It's a question of which one and the timing is so important.
Is there a better one? Is there a better application of it with so many parts per million? Or what's the optimal way to manage your weeds within your planting, especially in high density plantings or conventional plantings?
JP.
I've had really good luck with fall applied Prowl H2O between the fall after harvest, or that's been the best for me because it gives me a little bit more time in the spring to kind of get things going. Prowl, I think, is geared more towards grasses. That's the biggest issue that I have, is grass. And then after that, in the spring, we can come by with Gramoxone burn down and another application of Prowl H2O again in the spring.
I'm sorry, JP, what was that? What burned down?
Gramoxone, paraquat. So paraquat will burn everything down, and then it'll come back once things start to green up again. Hopefully before pink or before trees start to bloom, and we can clean some stuff up with like a stinger or like a 2,4-D before the bees go in. But fall applications, I think, really, really help because no one's busy in the spring doing other stuff.
Is this early fall or late fall?
You got to do it before the weather gets too cold, so it can have a chance to get in there. Prowl needs like a half an inch, or quarter inch, or a half inch of rainfall to get down in the soil and get working. So on my high density stuff, which is all like Honeycrisp, Sweet Tango, most of that stuff is harvested, before October. So I'll put someone else on it or do it myself and try and get at that stuff, hopefully by MBA or mid-October and get it down. I've got it down to where I've got, I can do all my trellis stuff in just about a day. So if I can get an 8-hour period, I can put all my Prowl or whatever down, kind of early fall, just to buy me some more time in the spring, because it's just, once that stuff gets on the ground, or if you're trying to kill grass that's more than 6 or 8 inches tall, you're going to be fighting all summer. So
And Prowl won't kill anything that's already germinated.
Right.
It's strictly pre-emergent. So yeah, that's an important thing. You need to get that on before you have anything germinate.
So how wide is your herbicide strip?
48 inches, 4 feet.
Are you
It's
worried
just
at all about?
it's a band, it's like a boom spray band with 3 nozzles on it that'll do a 48 inch band. I tend to kill a little bit wider band under like central leader trees. I'll come out basically to the drip edge of the tree. On my high density stuff, I'm probably coming out 3 feet, 3 to 4 feet based on how big the trees are.
I see. Do you ever get concerned, JP, if in having that wide of a herbicide strip, that killing that sod is you're losing some ground protection from temperature in the wintertime? You know, it's kind of like it's that balance.
Yeah.
You know, how much does the sod give you in temperature protection with little or no snow versus no sod and just the bare soil condition?
I haven't lost any trees to winter damage in a long time. If they made it through that winter from, I think it was 12 into 13, 2012 into 2013, or 13 into 14.
13,
where it was,
14.
yeah, where it was, 10 below the third week of November or something like that. That was kind of the one. Like if we were going to lose the new rootstocks, that would have been the year. But I think it's trivial as far as if you're going for like winter damage by having grass grown into the tree. I think you're better off killing it.
Let's move to fruit quality, bitter pit, russeting, any of those concerns that need to come forward.
Cracking was a problem the year before for my sweet tango, but last year, it wasn't nearly as bad as the year before. But
You do anything different?
No, I think it was just weather conditions.
Weather conditions. Paul, would you tell us a little bit about the quality issue that you had there in Michigan on the sweet tango that JP helped us understand?
Well, we just had some gorgeous,
Talk loud.
we just had some really gorgeous sweet tangos. I mean, they were just beautiful. In fact, Eric's got pictures of it. And they just went to pieces like in just a couple days.
Huh?
They were just a finish on it. They were rock hard apples.
They split?
No, they just, what, that Russell thing was it?
Lenso breakdown.
Yeah, he's got pictures of it on it. He'll show you later on. But yeah, it just went to pieces just like that. And JP says that mildew, already down.
Oh, we've had blocks of sweet tango next to our pumpkin field. Well, we just kind of let the pumpkins go at a certain point and stopped doing powdery mildew prevention. And we've got powdery mildew on some of our tangos like that on the screen there, where it looks kind of like, it's tough to say if it's really, really late season russet, but I think russet has more like a raised feel on the apple versus powdery mildew I think is a little bit smoother. And we've gotten powdery mildew, I don't want to say extensively on some of our blocks at White Bear, but
Eric, you got a picture of the trees before they got it?
So was there an opportunity for powdery to get on these sweet tango in Michigan?
They did, at that point it didn't show, but it did show up later on the leaves. That's probably what it was.
On the leaves?
Yeah, but when that thing went to pieces, you wouldn't have known it was on the leaf.
Okay.
Had you done a late fungus application? Had you done a late?
It just caught him by surprise. He thought he had a gold mine, and all of a sudden he didn't.
So do you think he was making his fungicide sprays regularly, or did he?
Oh, no, he's very diligent, but at that time of the year, I don't think he was even looking for anything like that.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any quality issues? Colored up pretty well, even though it was a long fall and rainy, and fruit colored. Okay. Disease, fire blight, or scab, or any of those issues? Yeah.
In Grand Rapids, our farm, I'm not up there all the time, I kind of look a few days each week, but I think we had a hailstorm up there earlier in the season, and we had quite a bit of fire blight. And it might have been a combination of hail, I think, because I know they had an experiment station there, and we're not that far away from it. But also,
Okay. So you saw scarring on the wood, or how did you think, or,
Fireplace.
no, I bet, but how did you know you had a hail previous?
Well,
before the-
I didn't, because we just, I didn't expect to have fire, but we didn't have the wet conditions.
Yeah.
During bloom, and that would maybe initiate that, but I, all of a sudden we saw it and it started spreading more and more, and I assumed that it might have been possible to have.
Okay.
I did have it up there.
All right. Did you get it under control, or
We kept
did a lot of
cleaning it out
pruning?
during the year, and then we kept stubs on the ones that we cut off, and this spring when the bloom, we took those stubs off, hopefully we'll,
Okay.
start.
How many trees do you think you had affected?
I'll bet, we just have 1,200 trees, but I'll bet we had, probably 100 trees that had it.
Variety specific, or?
No, we didn't really see it on honeycrisp, but on sweet tango.
Okay.
We got more sweet tango than other varieties.
All right. All right, good. Well, we do this survey for you to reflect on your year. You know, being a farmer, we always put the last years behind us and we move on, and we can't wait to get started and look optimistic about what we're going to accomplish and what we're going to do in the new year. You know, that's a farmer. And but sometimes it's good to reflect on what were the challenges and be sure that we are addressing those if they're ongoing, so that we get that quality and that yield that we're looking for. So I think it's good to go through this. Well, so I was talking to John Zimmer here, and he tells me that one of his blocks got froze out. So I said, well, you know, that's too bad, John, but why don't we turn it into do some research on that block. So I'm gonna show you a little bit of that, and John's gonna help me see if I can get this. So Agro-K makes an iron DL, and with our sap testing, we were noting that many times when we did the sap test, iron deficiencies were showing up. And were we able to address that? Do we have products to address that? So, John, I sent John some iron DL for foliar application. I sent him some of the new sulfur, the Nutra-Sulfone, and the cobalt foliar. And if you were at last year's either sap testing seminar where John Kemp talked about cobalt as a nutrient that reduces scab in apples, we thought, you know, Agro-K, we feel like we have one of the more superior cobalt forms in anywhere. It's part of our program. And we need to understand cobalt and does it reduce scab. So we did some research with cobalt, not only with John, but also with Palmer's Reality Research. They're a father and son research team in New York. And they have been doing a lot of research for Agro-K on bitter pit and the systems with Apogee, particularly. They were the ones who helped us with that data, and that developing that was Palmer's Reality Research. And then our own Richard Warner, he's the PhD research director for Agro-K. He did some sulfur study in California on some wine grapes. And my whole point is these are new products, we need to understand them, and so we're gonna just run through that. So this is the iron dextrolac, it's a 5% iron, and you understand that dextrolac, it's a complexing system we do where we attach a sugar to the mineral salt. So in Vigor Copper, that's a DL, iron DL. What we're trying to do is enhance the absorption of the nutrient, but soften its impact on the leaf or the fruit or whatever. So it's a soft form of that nutrient. So we're not looking to create a phyto problem. The sulfur, we developed that just because there's showing up a lot of nutrient needs for sulfur. How are we going to address that? So, let's see. So this is down in John's. The first one is the iron. I guess I thought we corrected that. It's Cortland. We had 3 varieties: the Cortland, the Sweet Tango, and the Fireside. And we applied, I think it was 1 quart foliar of iron DL. Is that right, John? Yes. 1 quart. And then, first of all, we took a tissue test pre-application. Then John made an application, and then he took we waited 10 days, 2 weeks, and he made another application, both at a quart. Is that right, John?
Yes.
Okay. So you could see the iron, that iron DL at a quart and a quart definitely moved the needle. It pushed the iron level up. This is not a sap test, this is a tissue test, but we were interested in that. Across the bottom is the sulfur, and at that same study, or that, I think we did 3 applications. I think we were doing like 6 or 8 ounces. 6 ounces of sulfur. And it did not move the needle. In fact, it went the other way. It went the other way. It decreased the sulfur level in the plant. So come to find out, my rate that I gave John was much, much lower, too low. They're usually doing a pint to a quart per acre foliar, and they're getting it on much, much earlier. I think this was July? July application, right. And then we also did, I don't have anything on the cobalt foliar because we didn't test for the cobalt, but we did make an application of the cobalt foliar on these apples to see, there was no sign of...
Just about the 15th of June was the first, which was kind of late, and then we did it in an orchard that was hit hard by the frost, so that we just observed the leaves to be minimal amount of scab left.
Minimal amount left.
Minimal.
Okay.
For cobalt.
Of cobalt. So the question is, my rate could be the issue. So then we go to, this is the New York study where they did the cobalt foliar at 8 ounces. That's the first one here. Let's see. Whoops. I want to go back. Where do I get the pointer, Eric?
The one right in front of the joystick.
Oh, yeah. So this is 8 ounces of cobalt, 12 ounces, and 16 ounces. And then it's the same repeat with the Captan. And they were evaluating for scab and for sooty blotch. They did 12 applications, 7 to 10 days apart, beginning at tight cluster. Well, you could see that it did have an impact at the lower rate on scab alone, but then when we put it with the Captan, it was really pretty effective. And looking back at this rate seems exceedingly high. I would never go 16 ounces. Usually we use this cobalt foliar at 3.5 to 6 ounces at the most. So the rates were too high. How do we know the rates were too high? Well, they had some phyto and some leaf drop at the quart rate. It's just too much. And so, Dave.
So 12 applications, that seems quite a bit.
It is. It is. It is a lot.
And would you recommend that, or
No, this is research. I'm not recommending that. I'm bringing this all to you today to say, Agro-K, we hear something, somebody says this works, we want to see if it works. Now, the suggestion has been, we have several calciums. If we would tweak our calcium with a little bit of cobalt when we need calcium, that might be a key to getting more calcium into that tree, as well as addressing that scab issue. And so that's probably where you're going to see it. When we went back and reviewed what John Kemp was saying, he had a multi-purpose micromix like our micromix, and he had cobalt in it. Ours does not have cobalt. So that's one place we could add a little cobalt and possibly address some of this overall health issue in the tree. So we're on a learning curve. So the valuable thing, though, is that Agro-K, we use the SAP analysis to help us sort out which products are working, which products are effective, and we want to address them. We want to do research. John was willing to play around with this, and he took the time and effort to do it, and we really appreciate it. This is a Agro-K program on wine grapes, but the main reason I'm showing you this is that at a quart per acre, the Nutrisulfone was very effective in terms of, this is yield. We have just a regular Agro-K program we use on grapes, and then we added a quart per acre of the Nutrisulfur, and I think they sprayed it like 3 times, or I don't think more than 3 times. It actually dramatically increased the bunch weight of the grapes compared to just a grower's program. And then on the bricks, we had more fruit and a heavier bunch, so we were just a slight under the sugars. We didn't have enough to jack that sugar up because we had just more fruit. So I would say pretty comparable. But my point is, I think the Nutrisulfur in the program early will have an impact if you get it into your crop on early and not wait. We were on John's situation. We were coming kind of after the fact. Things were probably pretty well determined, and it's probably hard to rectify that. So, have I confused you all? I hope I haven't. But know that part of our mission is to develop products that will address the issues that growers have. And so, we hear something, we see something that growers, issues they're having. If we can address it from a nutrient point of view and give you a better quality crop and healthier trees, that's what we would do. We would want to do that. And so you don't have to use a lot of extra pesticides and manage that. If we can get the strong, healthy plant, that's what we're hoping to do. So I think we're going to go on to the next. If there's no questions, we'll start. Seth Elkington will come, and he's going to talk to us a little about using these products in an apple program that he works with growers there.
Well, yeah, good morning. As Larry said, my name is Seth Elkington, and I am from Oregon and Washington. I'm the territory manager, sales manager for Agro-K over there. It's funny, Larry said he's been with Agro-K for 35 years. I just started with Agro-K a year ago in February. And before that, I was a crop advisor or crop consultant for the GR Simplot company over in that area. Let's see. Oh, that didn't work out too good. That's not supposed to look that way. Before I kind of get started, I wanted to show you guys this. I think most of you are probably familiar enough with Agro-K that you've probably seen this before, but This is, for lack of a better term, this is kind of our company motto. And when we're writing recommendations or we're making products, we always try to meet these criteria. You know, we want to be using the right nutrient in the right form, at the right time, in the right mix, and, you know, get the nutrient to the right place in the plant. And this is going to come back. We're going to see this again later on in the program. But like I said, this is very important. If you're managing your orchard, your fertility program, both soil and foliar, and you're kind of meeting these criteria, I think you're going to be successful, and you're going to have a nice looking crop and a nice orchard. So today, my discussion, I want to talk about sap analysis. That's going to be kind of the main overriding theme of my presentation today. And I'm going to talk about my experience with sap analysis. Last year was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. And I'm going to talk about my experience in the Walla Walla Valley. And then there's another gentleman that was trying it for the first time last year, Rick DeYoung. And if you guys were here last year, he gave a presentation. He's our territory manager up in Canada. And he did some work with sap analysis. And then I'm also going to touch on a few key nutrient relationships or interactions. And then, you know, if you guys pick up any more little interesting morsels of information along the way, then that would be good. So anyway, that didn't turn out very good at all. Well, you can't really read that, but okay, so to begin with, what sap analysis is, and Eric will probably touch on this a little bit more later on in the presentation, but so conventionally, normally when you take a tissue sample, you take your leaf sample or your petiole sample, and you send it off to the lab, and the lab will dry it down, remove all the moisture, and then they run an analysis on that dry matter. And then that's the result you get. You see what nutrients are in the dry matter. Where sap analysis is different, you get your leaf sample, you send it off to the lab, and then they extract all the juices out of the leaf, and then they run an analysis on that. And the idea being, you know, when you look at a dry matter analysis, you're seeing that the nutrient accumulation over that whole period of time. So you're kind of looking at what the plant was doing maybe 2, 3, or even 4 weeks ago. Where when you run sap analysis, you're getting more of a real-time snapshot of what's actually moving up and down in that plant, you know, right now, instead of, you know, seeing something that the plant did weeks ago. And, you know, the only delay there is, you know, how fast can you get the sample to the lab and then get your results back, which with the company that we worked with has, you know, been pretty good at getting those things back to us. So, and like I said, I think Eric will probably touch on that a little bit more down the road. I apologize for that and looking not so good. But so anyway, the reason why I wanted to do sap analysis was, you know, again, I wanted to try to help my customers raise better apples. That's, you know, that's the overriding theme for whatever we do. Anytime we tweak a product, like Larry was saying, or try something different, you know, the ultimate goal is we're trying to raise better apples. And then for me personally, I thought it would be a really great way to really have a better understanding of what nutrients we're removing in the plant, you know, at any given time. So I would have hopefully get a better understanding of what actually is going on nutrient-wise in the plant, you know, over the course of the season. Because you know, during cell division early on, the plant is utilizing certain nutrients, and then later on, as it's trying to finish the crop, it's utilizing, you know, other nutrients possibly. So that was one of the big reasons I like to do it, or wanted to do it. Another big factor was I thought we would be able to use it to detect deficiencies earlier, and we actually were able to do that. And then the other big reason that I wanted to look at this with my growers in Walla Walla was we have very high levels of potassium in our soil over there, and you know, we wanted to learn how to manage those a little bit better. And then kind of moving on, so like I said, I did my experiments, or I did my sap testing in the Walla Walla Valley. you can kind of see, here's a little geography lesson in case you're wondering. This is where the Walla Walla Valley is right here. It's about 300 miles from the Oregon coast. It takes about 5 hours to drive over there. I actually live right down here in the Willamette Valley in Salem. And then here's a little bit closer up view. You can see here's kind of the Walla Walla Valley where we did our sap testing. This right here is just kind of the east end of the Yakima Valley, which is, I mean, that's a pretty heavy tree fruit production area. And then up through here, this is kind of the lower Columbia Basin, mid-Columbia Basin, lots of tree fruit up through there. And then, Wenatchee, Chelan is kind of up in here too. But anyway, yeah, that kind of gives you an idea where we're at. Well, I'm gonna have to really work on those pictures. Apple production in the Walla Walla Valley is, I'm pretty sure, quite different than what you guys are used to. We deal with, we really don't deal with the cold in the spring like you guys deal with out here. The cold comes back to bite us a lot, though, in the fall. We had here a few years ago what we call the early retirement freeze. We were just finishing picking pink ladies in, it was November. It was late. It was a late harvest. And then over the course of 36 hours, the temperatures went from, I think it was like 70 degrees down to 5 degrees over the course of 36 hours. And like I said, we had just finished picking those pink ladies. And of course, when those trees are all pumped up and they're, the juices are flowing, and then when the temperature changes that fast, it wiped them out. And I had a lot of really good friends that were raising both pink ladies and cherries that are no longer in the orchard business anymore just because of that freeze. Like I said, typically it's a warmer climate in the springtime. It's interesting. You guys, I think, use a lot of potassium in the springtime to mitigate frost. And that's not something that we really have done much in the Walla Walla Valley at all. We do struggle with fire blight tremendously. That trifecta of death of having 70 degrees bloom and then moisture in the orchard happens to us a lot. We really struggle with that disease. We do get some pretty good coloring weather. Typically, I'm not saying this is happens all the time, but we normally can get really good color on our galas because we do have situations where we'll get nice warm days and cool nights over there. So we typically, I'm not saying always, but typically color isn't a major problem for us. The one thing that we do run into, and it kind of says it maybe right here, like I said, we have high potassium levels in our soil, which if you're familiar, if you guys do any fruit analysis, the K to Ca ratio is a great indicator of storage issues. And I'm not going to go as far as to say as Walla Walla Valley has a bad reputation for storage issues, but people do think that apples coming from that valley tend to not store as well because we do have such high potassium, and that throws our K to Ca ratio off. And so it's something that we've tried to manage a little bit. Honeycrisp in our valley tend to get really, really big. In fact, a lot of experts from Washington State University and Oregon State University say that they shouldn't even try to raise honeycrisp over there because they get too big, their bitter pit is going to be out of control. But, when you've got apples that sell for $60 a box, how can you ignore that if you want to keep updating your crops and can't just keep your Is and Reds all the time? So anyway, yeah, that's it. Can anyone tell me what's going on with these Honeycrisp apples? Yeah, that is the enemy. That's bitter pit, and like I said, we struggle with that in this orchard a lot, or in these orchards. So sampling and sap analysis. This was kind of something that I had to learn, and I wanted to share with you some things that maybe I didn't quite do right. If you look at the Nova Crop Control website, there's kind of a general sampling guide, and in there, it says you need to generally collect about 30 leaves as your sample, and that's all you need, and you can turn that in. Well, I can tell you, in my experience, that's not the case. You need to go with this 80 grams of total matter, or 12 ounces, something that would fit in a 12-ounce drinking bottle. Because I sent my original samples in, and they said they couldn't run an analysis because I didn't send in enough tissue. So, I had to learn the hard way. Hopefully you guys, if you start doing this, you won't have to learn that way. But yeah, and it's quite a bit more than you might think. To take leaves and stack them on top of each other, like you're stacking paper or something, that's quite a bit. And when they told me that I didn't get enough, when I actually went back and did it again, I had to collect like 250 or 300 leaves in order to meet that. So it took quite a while, but in order to get good results back, that's what you need to do. And then the other one, this is kind of the size that they want you to start, and you can kind of see it looks like that's in the pink bud stage to me. That's kind of where you wanted to start. When I wanted to do it initially, I didn't think that was early enough because I really wanted to see what, in those early stages, those first stages of growth, I wanted to see really what that tree was utilizing at the time. So I started a little bit earlier than that. As you can see, this was on April 5th. This was the Honeycrisp block. This is where I took my first sample. And you can see, that these are pretty small leaves. There's not a tremendous amount of stuff there. But this is where I started. If I had to do it over again, and which I am going to do this coming spring here in another few weeks, I'll probably wait. And this is when I took my second sample. I'll probably shoot for somewhere in between, somewhere, maybe a little bit more advanced bud stage there, but I don't know. I'm not going to try to wait too much longer after that. This is just thinning. We use a lot of lime sulfur to do chemical thinning in our area. I don't know if you guys do that much out here or not, but that's what that's from. That's nothing from what any Agro-K products would do that. The other thing, too, is when you first do sap analysis, those first couple of samples you're going to send in, they want you, normally you take two samples. You take a young leaf and an old leaf, and the idea being there is you compare them, and if the young leaf has a higher analysis of any particular nutrient than the old leaf, then that's an indication that the plant is kind of cannibalizing nutrients out of the old leaf to support the new growth. And that's because the plant's not getting those nutrients from other sources that it needs to. But so anyway, this was, like I said, this was my second test, and you can tell there really isn't enough growth here to really get a young leaf and an old leaf. So those first couple that I sent in, I was only able to send in one sample. And as you, on those first couple, they want you to label them as the old leaf because it just works better, if you're tracking the nutrients throughout the season like I was. This was my third sample on May 4th, and this was the first one that I was able to do, a young and an old leaf. And what I normally did was I would take the first fully formed leaf, so it would either be like this one or maybe this one, and then I would count down the shoot, and I'd get that like about fourth or fifth leaf down from the top. So, I'd be kind of right in here somewhere. But, you can see, we've got pretty decent sized apples there. That's probably, 20 millimeter fruit right there already. But so those are some kind of key points that I picked up when I first started this sampling. Probably if I would have just read through the website a little bit more, I would have got that, but I don't know, I kind of learned the hard way. So anyway, like I said at the beginning, one of the big things that I wanted to help do was to manage my potassium. And if you read the Good Fruit Grower or read any university data, managing potassium is critical for managing your bitter pit. And calcium obviously is the number one thing, but you also need to make sure that you don't let your potassium levels get too high. And as I was saying, I've been taking fruit samples in these orchards in Walla Walla for 8+ years, and always we had tremendously high potassium levels. And if you came to the presentation last year, John Kemp, one of the things that he said was, manganese can do two things. It can upregulate and downregulate your potassium levels. And that was one of the big reasons why I decided to try to do this. And, as you can see, so up here, this is my manganese graph over the course of the season, and this is my potassium graph. Now keep in mind, we didn't apply any potassium early on, but right off the bat, when we first started doing this, the sap testing was paying off, for me already, because in our soils over there, our pHs are such that manganese doesn't tend to be a limiting factor. Magnesium is more our limiting factor over there. But you can see that we were very deficient in our manganese levels, and this being a new kind of way to analyze our trees, we didn't really make any management decisions right off the bat. We just kind of wanted to see what things were doing before we made any decisions. But we went along for 2 weeks. And we were seeing our manganese levels drop, and so I talked to the customer, and he happened to have some System Ready, which is our zinc phosphite plus a manganese phosphite, and he made an application of that. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of manganese in it, but you can see we got a pretty good response from it 2 weeks later, and then another 2 weeks we took another sample, and we saw that again our manganese levels had dropped. And so I talked to the customer, and instead of using a phosphite, we just did 2 applications of manganese DL at 1 quart at a 7-day interval. And you can see, the response that we got. And I thought that was tremendous from there. And you can kind of see how the potassium and the manganese curves correlated a little bit. We did bring up the potassium levels, which was kind of alarming. But as you can see, as our manganese was coming down throughout the season, and we didn't apply any more manganese throughout the season in this block, you can see that our potassium levels were dropping quite a bit. So that was good. In fact, when we first started doing this, I was surprised that the potassium levels were in this range a little bit. Another thing I thought was interesting to note here. So as I was saying, the potassium, or when you're doing your leaf analysis, you want to see that old leaf be higher than your new leaf. That means that the leaf is getting all that nutrient that it wants. But you can see the entire time up until the very end, it appears that tree wanted to pull potassium more than what it was getting, because the new growth was always higher than the old growth. And I've heard that from other fertility experts when it comes to Honeycrisp apples. They absolutely love to pull potassium. And I think that's just a variety thing. And I don't know if you guys experience that out here, but it does seem to be a problem that we have over there. Another one, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this one too, the calcium and potassium interaction. When you're applying these products or applying these nutrients, they're very antagonistic if you apply them together. If you're applying potassium at the same time as you're applying calcium, you're going to antagonize your calcium uptake. And so that's why we preach this to everyone always. Don't apply potassium if you can help it, unless you're doing frost protection, during cell division window to try to keep those calcium levels up. Because especially in Honeycrisp, you need to try to drive as much calcium in there, especially during the cell division window, as you can, because the more calcium you have, the better off you're going to be. That was very clear to me, especially after this last year. And one thing I learned right off the bat that we needed to do on our Honeycrisp was we need to apply more calcium over there. And we thought we were doing a good job. The early applications, so we went in with a pink spray. We had Vigor Calbor Molly in there. And then just a little bit later on, about 10 or 15% full, or 10 or 15% bloom, we went in with 2 quarts of System C-Cal, and then we probably got at least one more application of 2 quarts of System C-Cal in there, and you can see we were struggling to get our calcium. And I don't think that's a reflection on the calcium product, because we'll show you some slides, some data here in a little bit to show how effective the calcium products that we have are at getting in the tree. I just think that with a Honeycrisp, we've got to double down on the amount of calcium that we're putting on. And that was another thing that I learned kind of early on doing my sap analysis this year, is that we need to adjust our calcium program a little bit.
How many sprays of calcium do you use? How do you guys are?
Oh gosh. Probably, so in that cell division window, so from probably, pink to like 2 or 3 weeks after petal fall, we probably have, and depending on the variety too, probably 3 or 4 applications of calcium in there, because we'll put our system cal in with our growth regulators, our apogees, max cells, promelins, that sort of thing. And then, just with our regular fungicide sprays, we'll usually throw calcium in. And then every cover spray, every coddling moth spray, every fungicide spray, mite spray, 2 quarts of Vigor Cal go in the tank. This particular grower also, on the Honeycrisp, actually on most of his orchard, he throws in calcium chloride product in there. So he'll get Vigor Cal on, and then he'll switch to the calcium chloride and just kind of alternate going through. I don't have it up here, but we track, of course, you can track the chloride curve too, and you can tell exactly where he started doing that because the chloride just goes like this all the way towards the end of the season. I'm kind of torn on the calcium chloride deal. It does appear to really kind of have a good impact in our calcium programs out there, but at the same time, I've seen where guys get in real trouble when they're spraying chloride back to back to back. They tend to mark things and burn things. But when we alternate Vigor Cal with the chloride, that seems to be the ideal situation. But yeah, 12 maybe calcium sprays. This guy was going probably with a calcium spray every 5 to 7 days throughout the season. And we still were struggling to get enough calcium.
Except did he ever use Orca?
No, we didn't have Orca. Orca only just got re-registered in Oregon. Actually, it's not registered in Oregon right now. But hopefully here in a couple of weeks it will be. But it did get approved for organic application, but now we will. We'll probably try to put some in there. But anyway, yeah, that's the potassium curve there again later on. So, end of the season, we're all done. It's a very common practice for us. We like to take we'll take samples of the fruit and send them off at harvest. And I don't know if you guys do this much out here, but it's a fairly common practice with some of the big warehouses over there in Washington. They take the fruit, they like to do all the nutrient analysis, and they'll really pay attention to the K to CA ratio and the N to CA ratio, because those are great indicators of storage. If you've got something with a really high K to CA ratio, those guys know they need to get it out of the warehouse fast and sell it, otherwise it's going to go bad. Anyway, so going back to the manganese, managing our potassium levels. You can see, it's kind of hard to see, but this is the Honeycrisp block that we were doing all of the sap testing on. And we had a fruit analysis of 54 parts per million. Now, like I said, I've been doing fruit analysis in this valley for 8 years, and probably 45 blocks I've sent in these fruit samples at the end of the year. That's the lowest potassium reading I've ever seen out there in that valley. Because normally they're up in the like this. This is the Gala block that's just 1 year older than this Honeycrisp block. It had over 100. This is in the 80s. This is in the 80s or 90s right here. So I do think that we did see a positive response getting our potassium levels down for making those extra manganese applications. Now, bear in mind, these are all different varieties. Honeycrisp, this is a Red Delicious, this is a Fuji, and a Gala. So, there's probably some differences in variety there, but, given the fact that I've had plenty of people, researchers tell me that Honeycrisp love to suck up potassium, the fact that we were able to get it down, to that level was very promising and very encouraging. Calcium was a huge struggle across the board for everything last year. I really can't explain that. I don't know why. We put a lot of calcium on. But again, our K to CA ratios were okay in most cases. This Fuji block, they weren't very good, but in most cases we were doing okay. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. But yeah, that was...
So did he have less bitter pit?
I'm going to say yes, we did, because I should have compared it, side-by-side trials, doing our program with something else in the same block, but we didn't do that. We don't quite have the acres. But I can tell you, we did still have bitter pit in this Honeycrisp block. We probably left, this is the first full crop the first crop period that this block has produced. And, we probably left 30% of the apples on the tree because they already had bitter pit. But I can tell you that our neighbor, who doesn't work with us, he had a Honeycrisp block, same age. I'm pretty sure same rootstock. They both did Geneva 41. He probably left 90% of his apples in the orchard. I don't even know if he actually bothered to pick them, honestly, because it was a disaster. It was a train wreck. And like I said, that's what all the experts tell us, that if you try to raise Honeycrisp in the Walla Walla Valley because it is so warm, it's going to be a train wreck. And that's true. If you're not going to manage them the way they need to be managed, you will have a train wreck out there. So, like I said, I do think that we had a positive impact. And, even so, given the prices of the Honeycrisp, I know this guy, that was probably one of his, highest grossing blocks that he had that year. So, anyway.
I'm not sure if I follow. When are you putting the manganese on? At the same time the calcium applications are on in the spring of the year during self-division?
We did. When we started seeing those early results, we would put on the manganese applications, going in the tank with our cover sprays in bloom. And as far as I know, I don't think we had any trouble with antagonizing our calcium. I do try to stay away from putting magnesium on at that time of year when we're doing our manganese applications, because potassium, calcium, and magnesium can all antagonize them, each other a little bit. They're kind of all the same size molecules, so the tree typically will try to take potassium first, and then it'll take the other two second. But I've read where if you put some, putting any one of those three on will reduce the uptake of the other two a little bit. But yeah, that was when we started seeing those. I can go back to it. So it would have probably been about 50% bloom, 20% bloom just after pink bud is when we first started putting on that manganese. So it would have been, oops. Oh, here we go. That first application would have gone on shortly after this. So we weren't quite into full bloom yet, but we were getting there. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions. I have no problem with you guys doing that. Another interesting, so I told you that first application was the system ready, the zinc and the manganese combination. And you can see, we weren't really super concerned with our zinc levels. They were dropping, but you can see what that one application of 2 quarts of system ready did to our zinc levels. They did drop again after that, but that makes sense to me because if you think about that in that stage of the growth, that plant is developing a lot of canopy. It's putting on a tremendous amount of leaves. And when a plant is doing that, it's using up a lot of zinc. It's pulling a lot of zinc. And so I just think that we put the application on and it got used up. We never got too low again, and it appeared that the tree was happy with the amount of zinc that it had. So we didn't put another application of zinc on until post-harvest, which we didn't do any zinc sampling. I took my last sap analysis right at harvest, so this wouldn't show any of that stuff. I wanted to show this one too, magnesium. Like I said, with our pHs, we tend to have a little bit lower pHs over there in that soil, and magnesium does kind of tend to be a limiting factor. And you can see, we did, kind of after petal fall, we did start to make a couple extra magnesium applications, but I'm wondering, we might do a little bit more this next year because you can see it appears that the plant wanted to pull more magnesium than what we were providing for it, because you can see that the new growth always had a little bit more than the old growth. So that's another adjustment we might make for next year. Take-home messages, unfortunately you can't read it, but I'm going to start I might start my sampling a little bit later. You know, you don't want to go quite at just pink bud stage. You want to wait till like that picture showed from the website. Wait until a little bit later till you got a little extra to leaf, because otherwise you're going to be out there sampling forever. I definitely saw some benefit to tracking the nutrients throughout the season. I mean, knowing what the plant is doing, it's a tremendously useful tool to know what to do and how to manage your orchard. And I do think we got some benefit from making those extra manganese applications to manage our potassium. The other thing that I took home is I need to use more calcium. I think we'll probably add a little more Vigor Cal in with our first applications to go along with that System C Cal, just to try to bump up the amount of calcium that we're getting in there. And then I do still have some questions about the SAP analysis. I think it's a great tool, but you know, I look at some of these curves, like the potassium and the calcium one. You know, is this really telling me what the plant is needing or wanting, or is it just an indication of yes, the potassium is a lot more mobile in the plant than calcium, and you know, the potassium levels are higher, so you know, is that just saying that the potassium is more mobile in the plant and the calcium is less mobile? So, you know, like I said, I still have questions about it. I'm still going to do it. I'm going to double down next year. We're going to do 2 or 3 blocks of SAP analysis, but it's a great tool. I personally need to learn more about it. Anyway, so that was it for the Walla Walla Valley. Now, this one, Rick did his testing was a little bit different than ours. Or different than mine, I should say. Up there in the Okanagan, what he was doing was,
Just tell us who Rick is.
Oh, Rick DeYoung he's our sales rep for up in Canada. He covers, you know, our neighbors to the north. He goes from East Coast to West Coast, and he's been on with Agro-K for, I think, about a year longer than I have, but he's a pretty smart fruit guy. Anyway, he was looking at some galas up there in the Okanagan Valley, and here, another geography lesson for you. There's Kelowna. Again, it's kind of more on the west coast, sort of. And then here's more of a close-up view of the Okanagan there. I think there's some pretty good skiing somewhere not too far from there. But he was looking at, he was comparing an Agro-K program, because this, you know, Agro-K has not been, we haven't had much representation up in Canada, and so Rick was hired on to kind of introduce Agro-K to the, you know, like I said, our neighbors to the north. And he was comparing a fairly standard fertility program that they use up there. These Boratrax products, Zinc Track, they're made by a company called Yara. And he was going to compare them to some of our products in our programs. Now, he didn't, the only thing he wanted to compare was just the products. He wasn't going to change their timings. He wasn't going to really change their rates or anything like that. Well, I shouldn't say that. He wasn't going to really try to change anything other than just the products. And he did it on 2 farms. Like I said, he did it at the Kelowna and then one up in Lake Country, which is about 25 miles apart there. And this was the grower standard on Farm A. And as you can see, the Boratrax and the Zinc Trax, those are some common, a boron product, a zinc product, that Hydromag, it's pretty self-explanatory, is a magnesium product, urea, Folical, or Phylocal, a couple times. And so anyway, that was the grower standard on Farm A. Just first off, the first thing to kind of note, I think, in this deal is here's some labels for, you know, the Zinc DL, which is what Rick used, and then this Zinc Track 700. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but I thought it was important to point out. When you see this label and you see this number right here, you're thinking, wow, 70% zinc. You're like, man, that is great. I'm going to get a lot of bang for my buck with this product. But you know, that is not always the case, and this can be tremendously misleading. The other thing too is they're comparing weight to volume. It's kind of like apples to oranges there a little bit. And I didn't do the math on this because I just pulled this off the web this morning. But this is going to be some number. The actual percent is going to be some number less than that. But you know, again, you see that 70% and you're thinking, man, I'm getting a lot of nutrient for my money there. Well, that's not always true, where, this is where the zinc DL is just a 10% product.
Why don't you maybe have Alex explain what essentially that type of product is?
Well, so they're listing, when you see very, very high percentages like that, they're listing it as the total chemical complex, because you're not going to have a straight base like zinc carbonate or sulfate and then whatever you're going to use to keep that in a solution. So when you see high percentage, you're listing, so that's pretty much 70% by weight of everything that's in there. It's not just the zinc level. So that zinc level is a lot lower than that.
So how would you know what the zinc level is? I mean,
You could have it tested, or
that's
you could,
the only, I mean, there's not.
if I could do a like if you guys come across products like these, just give us just ping us and I can figure it out to comparison to other products. They just, like Seth said, they list like that so you get the wow factor.
Yeah.
And
It's very
It's
misleading.
not accurate.
Yeah. Very misleading. And this product is probably thicker than paint.
Yes.
It's really very insoluble material.
It doesn't say on the label what it's derived from. It just says it's a foliar zinc treatment for agriculture and horticultural use. Ours, and this may be too, this is a Canadian label, and ours is this is the US label for zinc DL. And we're derived from zinc carbonate, but again, like Larry said, this is reacted zinc carbonate, so it's the carbonate knocked off, and we chelate that salt, the zinc salt, to the sugar molecule.
So I just did a quick search. This is 50% zinc oxide, which means it's not like Chapman said, it's going to look like white paint.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you're doing. You'd be painting the plant with this. And unfortunately, the translation from, I guess, maybe the Macintosh to the IBM or whatever you want to call that didn't quite go over very well. But the other thing that I wanted to point out, if you'll notice on that, on the timing up there, he started at Silvertip. And Rick and I both, when I saw this program and I asked him about it, I kind of said, now what do you think about that? And if you look at our 5 R's, going back to this, which one's missing? Time. Yeah, the right time. And now, in my experience, this is what I recommend to my customers. So if you go to like the Cornell website, they have this up there. That's what they call Silvertip right there. Now, I would not tell my customers to spray anything on any nutrients on the field when they're at that stage. You're not going to get much impact from a nutrient application at that stage. The door is closed. You're not going to get anything in there. When I asked Rick about it a little bit more, he said that this is probably more the stage that they actually started spraying their nutrients. And again, now you guys, like I said, you might be different than what I would recommend, but still, that's not a tremendous amount of leaf surface for foliar uptake of nutrients. And this is the half-inch green. What I typically recommend to my customers is to start foliar nutrient applications at the pink bud stage. This is so a normal, kind of general recommendation that I would make is we would do our Vigor Calbor Molly in the Walla Walla Valley at this point, and then we would throw in a System Z-Mag or a System Ready at this stage, because there you get at least enough leaf surface to actually have an impact on nutrient levels in the plant. So anyway, just a little bit of review, but I thought it worthwhile to point that out.
I just talk about if you do the post-harvest program properly, then.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very important point to make. If you do a really good job of a post-harvest application, if you get it on after harvest when you still have nice, viable green leaf tissue on the plant, applications of zinc, magnesium, boron, potassium, and urea, those are kind of the main ones we hit. If you can do that, that tree will take those in, and those nutrients will be stored in the wood. My father-in-law told me a story that, when he was in college back in the 70s, I think, or late 60s, he had a professor back then saying that, yeah, applications, post-harvest applications of nutrients have a tremendous impact on available nutrients in the spring. So, yeah, Chapman brought up a really good point. Yeah, doing a good job on your post-harvest application will help feed this early stages of growth. Here at Farm A, this was what Rick was, this was the program for Agro-K that he put in. Cowboy Molly, Zinc DL. Transit Mag is System Mag, it's the magnesium phosphite. And then, of course, Pedal Fall, Magnesium DL. Transit C-Cal is System C-Cal, which is the Sim Spray calcium phosphite product, and then Calcium DL. And this Farm B, kind of sort of the same program, a little bit different products, the Cal Zinc, and that Philo Cal there again. So the other big thing, I think that I need to show this. Oh yeah, here was Rick's program on Farm B. So, and then this was the growth stage that Rick took his samples. He actually, so he took a set of samples, he got them in the mail, and the first time he took samples was 6 or 7 days after that last calcium application was made. And he got them in the mail, sent them off, and then 7 days rolls around and he hasn't heard anything from the lab or anything. Well, it turns out whoever the postal carrier was that he used lost his samples. And he said when he got his samples back, he was able to dump, pour whatever was left in the bag out. So then, fast forward another 2 weeks. So a total of 3 weeks after the last calcium application was made was when he actually got samples taken again and got those actually to the lab. And this was, the results of the zinc from the SAP analysis. And as you can see, the Agro-K program outperformed the other program by a significant margin. And a good thing to note here, look at the total pounds of zinc that was applied versus what the competitor applied. So even though that analysis was super high, he didn't get much into the plant at all. And that should really drive home the point that formulation is really important. That's another one of our big R's that we like to really harp on people about is, it's, oh.
Could you go back about 4 slides?
Oh, sure. Right there?
Why do you apply urea?
That's a good question. And honestly, in my area, I don't apply urea at that time. I imagine he's putting that on just to, those guys up there just to try to feed the growth a little bit. Yeah, I'm with you. I would not have, that was another thing that Rick and I talked about. I would not have applied urea at that time of the year. In my neck of the woods, like I said, fire blight is a terrible, terrible issue that we deal with. And foliar nitrogen that time of year can really compound your fire blight problems. So, and I know up there in the Okanagan Valley, Rick and I have talked about this before, fire blight is not a big issue for them up there. They don't generally get that, like I said, that trifecta of death during their bloom window. So yeah, that was a mystery to me. I certainly wouldn't recommend that. So yeah, good question.
What do you recommend in the fall?
Post-harvest, yes. Yeah, urea, it helps, with a little bit of root flush, try to get a little extra growth before, the tree shuts down. Yeah, I do recommend it in the fall. Did you have a question?
Again, those 3 sprays that they have, chemical that they have in silver tip, you wouldn't recommend that, would you?
No, I think that's too early. Like I said, and Rick agreed with me too. I would not recommend a foliar nutrient application at that time. But again, for this particular plot that he wanted to do, Rick, the only thing that he wanted to show was the difference in efficacy from the different formulations of the nutrients. I imagine Rick, is going to go back to these guys and say, hey, look, using these products is going to, deliver more nutrients to your plant. Another thing you could do better is maybe waiting to put those nutrients on a little bit later. So, but yeah, that's also a good point. I would not recommend putting on a nutrient application at that time. Like I said, the pink bud stage, where'd it go? Right there. I mean, this is what I'd want to see before I started putting on any nutrient sprays.
We
we have recommended early sprays, though, whenever we use the phosphite, we know we get some absorption through budwood and through new wood. So we have measured that. So I don't know who made that recommendation, but you know, we have done it early.
Well, you can tell
And
from.
we use the engine. The only way that we would do it would be there has to be a phosphite with it. There has to be system cal or zinc, something to pull it in.
You can tell, I mean, from the results that they obviously got some uptake because, you know, look at the response they got in their zinc from the zinc DL. But yeah, right form. And my son is basically demonstrating, you know, he's answering the call of nature there. But if you're using the wrong form of a nutrient spray, that's kind of what you're doing with your money. Just kind of, you know, leaving it out there. So again, make sure you pay attention, use the right form of nutrient before you know.
I think that cell that you showed with the total pounds of zinc, that it didn't even get in the, I mean, it was just wasted product that didn't even get in the plant.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, so. Anyway, somebody have questions? Yeah.
Another question for you. You mentioned the fact that potassium and calcium are antagonistic. This may not apply to your experience, but our frost problems suggest mixing systems cal and KDL.
Now, see, there's a situation where, you know, you kind of, you know, what's going to be more detrimental to your orchard? Is it the, you know, frost, or is it limiting your calcium uptake? Well, in that situation, I would, you know, lean towards making a potassium application because, you know, I know that in our fall spray programs, like I said, the cold really gets us later on in the year. And I know where my customers do a really good job of putting on a potassium spray post-harvest. When we get these you know, cold snaps like that late in the season, you can always drive down the road and see which guys did a good job of doing a potassium post-harvest spray versus the guys that didn't, because I'm not saying that they don't get any damage from the cold, but their damage is greatly reduced. And in your situation in the springtime, when you're trying to protect that tree from frost damage, yeah, potassium plays a big role in that. And so I would definitely say, you know, you need to be doing that. If you see a weather event coming that could really be damaging to your trees, you need to do that.
See, the frost spray, we have calcium with a little copper in the system cal. So you're getting calcium and copper in the phosphite form, which pulls the potassium, whatever stage you have, bud swell or bloom or whatever, into that plant. So what we're trying to do is accelerate the absorption of that potassium. That's why we use the phosphite. But you're also getting some calcium, which helps with protection, and some copper. So in our we used to spray just KDL alone, and we feel like by putting the phosphite and the copper, the potassium DL together in combination, we get actually better absorption in that plant, no matter what the stage. You know, if you feel like I need some protection, I better spray. That's why we put the two together.
Yeah, it's in that situation. I mean, it is kind of a case you got to pick your poison a little bit. You know, if you're looking at a frost event, you better. I would recommend putting on a potassium. You know, kind of on the flip side of that, we use potassium a lot to mitigate heat stress in our area. We do that on our apples. We do that on our blueberries, and it has a big impact. Especially, you know, if we're going to get on our blueberries, I really see it a lot. Where, you know, in the Willamette Valley, we have a pretty moderate climate, and then when we get these events where it's going to go to 100 degrees and we got fruit hanging there, you get a lot of fruit drop with heat like that. But, you know, you can tell where guys have done a good job on their potassium and getting that on ahead of that heat event. You know, they really do mitigate the stress that gets on that plant. Here's the boron. So, yeah, the Yara foliar program did outdo ours by a little bit, not much. I mean, they got in their new leaves just over 5 parts per million, and ours came back just under 5. and then on the old leaf, under 3 and just over 2 for us. But here, again, the thing to point out is they put on 13 times the amount of boron that we did, and we really weren't that far off on theirs. And again, Rick and I talked about this. Now that Topset is going to be available, that's probably something that we would utilize a little bit more. When he was doing this project, the only boron product that Agro-K had available was the Vigor Calbor Moly, and it's got a 0.4% analysis of boron. And from my experience, it's a great product. It fits great for my situation in the Walla Walla Valley because we have a lot of boron, and we just want to have a little bit to kind of feed that little peak demand right there at the beginning. And Vigor Calbor Moly is a great fit. But like again, next time if Rick does this, I imagine he'll probably use Topset as his boron product, and I imagine you would see a much different result there. One thing though, another key relationship to point out, the reason why I think we still had as good a results as we did from that is because another key nutrient relationship is when you apply boron with calcium, there tends to be a synergistic effect, and that when you apply them together, you tend to get better uptake of both. And that's another key one to remember. That's why you see a lot of products out there that are a calcium and a boron combination, and this is one of the big reasons why. Here's those labels again. Yeah, like I said, kind of the same thing that Alex was telling us earlier. This actually works out to be a 10% boron product, and as you can see, it's just a 0.4% Vigor Calbor Moly. Here's the calcium, and we were using calcium DL, and they had the PhyloCal, and you can see we got much better uptake, and we used a fifth basically amount of active, or a fifth amount of calcium that was applied compared to theirs. So another really good result there. And here's the magnesium. Basically just about the same amount of magnesium applied, and again, we outperformed them. Not a lot, but it's significant. From this, take-home messages, the biggest one is formulation is critical. Don't get sucked in by these labels that have super high analysis of whatever nutrient that you're trying to put on. Pay attention to your labels. They can be very misleading when they're comparing weight to volume. And again, it was kind of not as much of a main point of this deal, but SAP test was very useful in evaluating this plot that he did up there. That's actually all I have for you guys today. So thanks for your time. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Did you do a cost comparison?
On Rick's, I don't know if he did. He didn't give me that information, but that would, I would have to look into that. I imagine they're probably very similar in cost, if I had to guess. If not, wouldn't you say, Larry?
I would, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something that I could get to Rick. Maybe we could get that information to you later, but I could talk to Rick and see if we can get that info. Yeah.
Can you go back to that Vigor Calbor Moly right there? What's the difference in the percentages for Topset versus?
Oh, Topset is 9% boron and 0.5% moly. So there's no calcium in Topset, but it's 9% boron and 0.5% moly.
You could put that then with Vigor Cal. You do the 5%, you could put that if you need the combination. You could add Topset to whatever you need to spray, rebloom, if you know that you have a need for more boron and more moly.
Moly is, the plant utilizes moly in pollen production and pollen tube receptivity. So it's a great timing for that. Peak demand would be, right ahead of that pollination window. Any help you can give the bees is welcomed. It's great on legumes. I don't know if you guys raise any legumes on the side, but and you don't need much moly. Moly is, you don't need a ton. A little bit goes a long way, but on our legumes, on our clover, on our peas over there in the Columbia Basin in the Willamette Valley, the Topset has a great fit. We see a big benefit.
Seth, was their grower program, did they have calcium with the board track, or did they just apply that?
No. Oh, yeah, they did. So on Farm B, they did. They had that Cal Zinc product. I don't know that the analysis on that is.
That's actually a dry product.
Yeah, it's a dry. High analysis, dry product. And then on the other farm, wait a minute, where'd it go? There, yeah. So no, they didn't put any calcium on that first application. They didn't put calcium on until petal fall. That's way too late to start your calcium program too, in my opinion.
Example two of the synergistic relationship between the calcium and the boron is if you have a soluble form or a good absorptive form of calcium that will help the boron get into the plant even at lower levels.
Yeah, definitely a synergistic relationship between calcium and boron. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.